on the Midas Letter Network.
We're back.
What's going
We've
on,
got
buddies?
Greg, we've got buddies, we've got Karl here today.
We got Brandon.
We have myself, Brandon, as well. Stacked lineup today. We're starting off with Greg Engel, CEO of Organigram. Had a nice interview with him. We'll be switching over to Deepak Anand, CCI. There's a lot of cool things about Canadian legalization in the world. And what's going on there as well. We have Matt Dyke. Yes, Matt, I'm so sorry I said Mike during the thing. I was talking about the mic over here though.
Yeah.
Matt Dyke coming on here as well,
professional,
talking about some real estate, and we're ending it off with Johnny Mac.
Johnny Mac.
We're going to be doing some TA.
We're going to do whatever we want.
We're going to dive into it.
We will do whatever we want.
So that's what our show's going to look like.
Yeah.
But what are we going to talk about? There's a couple of things, you know, like
Well,
legalization.
first of all, we have new chairs. I like.
They don't slide. They don't go back.
Yeah, it's good. So that's pretty important for me, actually.
Nice.
I wonder what's going to happen with CCW here, because there's all these things on the World Wide Web. Basically what the news is going to be. No, the news is not out. We don't know for sure. But I wonder if it's going to be a sell-on news, because there's a lot of these momentum people.
It's going to happen every time they put news out.
These momentum traders get a hold. They've obviously got a position because they're telling everybody. And they're telling people what the news is supposedly going to be. So I'm wondering what's going to happen whenever the CCW news comes out.
Yeah, we've seen it, like you were saying, Greg. We've seen it numerous times now where it's great because you might take it from 40, 50 cents to 60, 70, wherever it is, $1 to $1.20. But if people already know exactly what it is, that's quite literally buy the rumor, sell the, like that is the epitome of what that's supposed to be.
Well, unless it's market moving news,
which it
you know
could
what I mean?
be. I
but,
like
you know,
CCW.
assays, they concern me here, because you know what my meme is that I put in our chat rooms all the time.
Yeah. Assays?
Assays.
That's what it's been recently.
Yeah.
Assays come out and everything.
Well, and it's a
Every
weak
time.
market, right? So anyways,
Yeah.
I'm not predicting the news. I'm just curious. I don't own any CCW anymore,
Yeah.
but I do know some people that do. So I'm just a little bit concerned here, because
Yeah.
we got the momentum guys telling everybody what's going to happen.
We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see.
What do you think is going to happen there, Greg?
I'm not looking.
Gregory?
G Lucky. G
Oh,
Lucky as in our Discord chat. That's
Why do you got to rat him out like that?
I know. I have to.
It's me.
Yeah.
Difference between a West Ender and Scarborough. Right there.
I think I'm pretty much of Toronto. We're still all in Central, but what else though? We got cannabis.
I don't know, the fact that the whole market's going down.
It was insane. So
That's a big correction.
we talked about it a couple times. You know, is there going to be a correction? Is it to sell the news? And I had one person so emphatically come out. Why would it be sell the news? We know exactly what it's going to be. Well, look what happened. It was a really, really bad situation where we had an absolute sell-off. Like I did not think it was going to be that aggressive. That was way too aggressive. Some of these things were almost all of them were down in double digits, 20%, 30%. In a course of 4 or 5 days, some of these LPs retraced like 40% of their entire value. And then yesterday, we saw a little bit of a bounce coming into today, and I think today
Well, you look at ACB,
it's all over the place today.
They went down and then they came back, but then they were back down 10%. Like that's a huge swing.
Yeah, massive swings.
Well, first of all, my broker wouldn't let me short. I exercised some warrants, and the price went up really high. I wanted to lock in some gains, and they wouldn't let me do it, so I'm pissed. Friggin' discount brokers.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it cost me a lot of money.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know what? If you're a bank, or you're one of these alcohol companies, pharmacies, and you want to take a position in a big LP, you got to like where the valuations are now. A lot better than they were. Just saying.
Flash sale. It was a flash sale yesterday.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
But I want to see some deals made now,
Yeah,
right?
100%. They have to come out. They have to.
Get some of these people in. The valuations are pretty good. I mean, unless they want to wait around for another 6 months, which maybe they could.
Yeah, well, if they weren't in a rush the last 3 or 4 years as everything was coming up to this and they were watching the evaluation double, triple, quadruple, etc.
Yeah.
They're not in a rush. But
Well,
I still
what do
think
you
it's
think is
coming.
going to happen there, Brandon?
I really think it's going to, there's going to be someone coming in. I
So
really do.
Let me ask you a
Where's
question.
Diageo and all this? Like where? Like
I'll
had
call
so
them.
much
I'll
time.
get it. They're on speed
It's
dial
so much
earlier. I'll
stock,
give
and
them
then like,
Where
it's
do
just
you
gone.
Where do you think we're going to end the year off in cannabis?
Oh.
I still think it's going to be good.
What price do you think Canopy will be at?
Oh, we're getting serious with this prediction.
No, don't answer that question.
Yeah,
but
that's
you
a harder
think,
one.
but you think we're going to be higher than we are now?
Personally, I mean, look what happened. We've had a huge retracement. We have a lot of money coming in. When that was going down, people were just shorting the living crap out of it, and people were
Profit taking
panicking.
too.
profit taking as well, and panicking. I think a lot of that, especially yesterday, when that, I think that was panicking, saying, I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore. I really do think we're still going to have a move, especially if we do have a larger player come in, like a massive bank, a drink company, a Diageo, a Pepsi, a Coke. Are they in a rush to come in? I don't know, but they're most likely going to want to, like if you look at what's happening in the States right now, what's happening in Canada, they can still come in Canada, they can still be a part of one of these massive LPs, get their formulations, their drinks, their food, whatever it is, start building that so when the United States goes legal, because a lot of people think it's going to be 2020 now. With the election, they think it's going to be coming soon, especially with midterms coming up. If that's happening, do you want to wait for everyone else to wait till America starts, or do you want to be in Canada, get the framework, and then bring it back into your home country if it was an American player who came over?
If they're not going to go legal for 2 years,
you can't sit on the sidelines.
No, that just gives Canada a lot more of an opportunity.
100%.
And these American companies will want to be in Canada. Look at Constellation, American company. They'll now have a controlling interest. They'll basically own Canopy Growth Corporation.
They made a smart move, man.
Oh God, yeah.
They took an equity piece of the #1.
Yep.
The first mover.
I think we'll see more of that.
Brilliant.
American companies coming over, getting a nice foothold, and unfortunately, I'm a Canadian, I love our economy, love our country. We are not the United States. Just look at the numbers. They'll come over, they'll make their footprint, and then go back. I'm just saying that they're, I'm just saying they're, the economy and just your ability to compete in the United States, they absolutely trump Canada.
Oh yeah. Oh boy.
I think we need to throw to our next segment.
Oh, watching the time. Love it.
Busy.
We are going to the CEO of Organigram because we were talking about something that just recently happened. Stay tuned to find out what that was. We're here with Greg Engel, CEO of Organigram. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of things have been happening over the last while, and there's a special event coming up. October 17th, we've got legalization coming in Canada. That's a massive milestone. How's it been for yourself as this road to legalization from all the different years in the company?
Yeah, I mean, what's really exciting for us is, certainly October 17th is a monumental event, not just within Canada, but globally, right? The world is really watching. And I think, for Organigram, we're currently in a great position in terms of, not only our production levels and what we'll have available. We were smart in terms of bringing in automation early and working with some of the hiccups some other companies have had with things like excise stamps. We didn't have those hiccups. But secondly, while we're a national player and we're providing, across Canada to really virtually almost all the provinces, we've got a really strong position in Atlantic Canada. And what's unique about that is that Atlantic Canada is the only part of the country where we're going to see fully built out retail stores on a comprehensive level on day one. Right, and that's one of the things that's important. New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, all have their retail stores built out. And I think that's really exciting. And so we're going to see more of a kind of true reflection of what the market's going to look like on day one, whereas in some other parts of the country, a couple stores are open in some locations. And Ontario, for example, is online only at first. So I think that's great and very exciting part of what we're doing. And we're proud to be a maritime-based company, but it's been a big plus for us.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because it's true. I mean, our largest economy, speaking province and territory-wise, is Ontario, and we will not get that same footprint or those same measures like, oh, that's what recreation will look like.
Right.
We don't, April 1st, we don't get our first stores open. Even then, I'm sure it'll have to take time from that as well. Do you expect a lot of online orders still coming inside of Ontario? Is that going to be a big thing, or do you think a lot of people are just going to wait till up to April 1st?
Well, I think it's really dependent. I mean, certainly everyone's comfortable in a world where Amazon has such a, and other online retailers play a big part of everyone's lives. People are comfortable ordering online, but I think there's just something about, that whole experience of visiting a retail store, talking to, staff that have a full education, being able to talk about the brands. So, I think you are going to see a difference in terms of the market pickup in, a market like Ontario versus Atlantic Canada. It'll come over time. We've also done some market research, actually. We have a partner company that we work with in Colorado called the Green CEO, and we've done some market research of their customer base to just really understand market dynamics of purchasing, whether or not you're a first-time purchaser or an ongoing kind of secondary, third-time purchaser. And certainly still the predominant #1 experience people are looking for on day one is to visit a retail store. So, I think that's where the Atlantic Canada is going to have an advantage. And there are other parts of the country like Manitoba and Alberta, they're going to have a small number of stores open. But I think, it's going to take time to see the same pickup. So what we will see is those markets that have online sales only will take longer to kind of build up over time, and the other markets will certainly outpace them and outperform them in terms of a per capita basis for sure.
Yeah, and it's it's unique as well, because not only is cannabis obviously quite different from alcohol, these other aspects where, if I'm buying a bottle of wine, if I've done my research into it and I like that bottle of wine, I'm just simply going to buy it again.
Sure.
If I could do it on the internet, that's fine. So it's a lot different for cannabis, because not only does each strain, well, I guess like alcohol, it's very, very different, but there's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of people who want to go to that store and be like, okay, what's the difference between indica and sativa?
Right.
What's the difference between this strain and this strain? This one's high CBD, this one's high THC. What does that mean? So it's going to be, I think it's going to be harder to really get that message out over the internet, because if it's the internet, you really want to go there, where if it's a store and you're just walking by, like, well, that's interesting, it might entice you to come in. So we'll see how that's going, but it seems like out in the Maritimes, you guys are going to be fully running.
I think it depends on the consumer, right? So certainly an existing consumer who knows what they want, knows what they're looking for, they're going to be able to kind of go online and make decisions based on that, and they may not be able to, they may not want to or need to. And even some kind of returning or new consumers will go online and make purchases. But, we look at three groups of consumers, right? There's existing cannabis consumer, there's the new user that's never used the product and says, hey, I want to try this now that it's legal. And then we call them the boomerang user, which is someone who's used at a different point in their life and is deciding now that it's legal, they want to come back. And I think, for those users and the new users, there's a lot of education and interaction. Now, there will be resources available online, and when you visit sites, there'll be information on products. Yeah. But I think that whole retail experience is going to be one that, a lot of those consumers certainly are looking for. And I know we're expecting increased call volume pretty quickly in terms of our client services. It's one of the things the provinces have talked to us about. Are you going to be able to handle some of these inbound calls from, potential consumers that are asking questions about your product once they buy it? And so absolutely we're prepared for that.
Yeah, and that's good to hear. Now, something you're also going to be prepared for very recently. So Organigram is just recently, I believe, gotten your, whether it's the last application or you did get your organic certification back.
Yeah, so
that's significant.
Yeah,
for you guys.
very significant for us in terms of today, as as I understand, there's only ourselves and Whistler that are actually producing organically grown cannabis in the country, and we have our roots are in organic production. Historically, that's all we did. We lost our organic certification at the end of 2016, and we've been working diligently with EcoCert to retain that back. That being said, it's only a portion of our production. It's less than 5% of our total production, because while at the end of the day there's a demand for an organic product, and what we've seen is that you can never get the same yields that you can get through mineral production. We've got some of the highest yields in the industry, which has been able to help drive down our costs to be one of the lowest costs, or if not the lowest in the industry. With organic, you'll never reach that number because it is a bit more challenging. You're not able to provide as much material into the plant in terms of driving fertigation, feeding the plant, and what you want to do. So it's certainly at the end of the day, you're not getting as robust a plant. You're still getting a very healthy plant. It's grown organically, but your yields will never be the same. But exciting for us nonetheless, and we know both medically and recreationally there's going to be a demand for organically grown product.
Yeah, absolutely. I could definitely see that there'll be a demand. So it's interesting that you're able to meet that demand, because there won't be that many players out doing that.
That's right.
And forgive me, I believe yours is the 3-tier system. Is that correct?
Yeah, one of the things that makes us unique. So if you go back in production, so one of the things that makes us very unique is in the early days of the program, it was difficult to get expansion on the footprint of your license. So the company made a decision to actually build vertically versus trying to go horizontally. So each of our production rooms is actually 3 different levels, and we operate in 3 different levels. And so it's been basically our continued expansion, and we're now capable of producing 36,000 kilos fully licensed for that, is all built out kind of with the next iteration of that 3-level grow. And what it allows us to do is it's very efficient and cost effective in terms of environmental controls, and we've invested heavily in environmental controls. And we've seen that it also kind of drives yields for us in terms of just having single strain rooms that can produce 1 million grams wet, and just the volume of that is so much so that it's a huge advantage for us. But also when you're controlling the environment in a very technical way, the product that you're getting on the 3rd level on the right-hand side is the same as on the lower level on the left. So we've really perfected that growing methodology. So.
And 36,000 kilograms, is that already growing right now, or is it coming online?
No, that's fully, so we completed our phase 3 at the end of June, so we've been harvesting from that, so we're kind of on a run rate of 36,000 kilos, and then our phase 4 A and B are currently under construction, and that'll bring us up to over 60,000, and then up to 89,000 kilos in production by August of next year.
Yeah, because that's actually a significant amount going into legalization. Have you found any like smaller LPs who have these, they've got commitments to one party or the other? Do you find that they're coming to you saying, hey, we need product?
We've had from both, so certainly a lot of demand from small LPs looking, or large LPs that are looking to buy wholesale product, and we're not wholesaling to anyone because we have a demand for our product in the market. Yeah. We've also had the various jurisdictions and both public and private retailers coming to us looking for additional product as well. So, we've seen some challenges. Some companies have faced some challenges out there, and I think they're not able to meet their supply fulfillment and supply demand. So, provinces have come to companies like Organigram looking for additional product. So we're in a great position to supply the market, and we're excited about October 17th.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I'm getting something stuck in my, sorry, give a good cough there. But no, it's interesting because there's so many different cannabis companies out there right now, and people are trying to differentiate who are going to be the winners and who are going to be the losers. And to have this footprint already and to get that organic certification back, that puts you in a really good position going into legalization, because it's not just legalization, it's the world.
Absolutely.
And being able to expand, you need to be able to have product to export. We want to expand. So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I think you look at kind of, to give you our perspective certainly on kind of winners and losers is execution is key as a starting point, right? I mean, you've got to be executing, and you've got to be executing against your plans. One thing we're most proud of is when we've shared with the market our timelines to do our build-outs, we've hit those timelines, and our phase 2 came on in February, our phase 3 came on in June, and that was what we committed to the market. I think so execution, regardless of what aspect you're doing, is key. Brand development is also critical, and we've created a comprehensive house of brands, and I think that's one of the key aspects of what we're doing. At the end of the day, consumers are used to looking at brands, and they're going to be wanted. So we've done a lot of market research to create our brands and develop like the Edison Cannabis Company. But I think also your last point was, in terms of international, I think, we're approaching international a couple different ways. One is finding partners in the local markets for production, and then looking for distribution partners across Europe, for example. Yep. We're already exporting both oils and dried flower into Australia. We've got a partner company in Germany that we're going down the process now of submitting for a production tender, through the tender process there. So I think, there's a ton of opportunities globally, and Canadian companies are in a unique position over the next couple of years, to really take advantage of that, and we're focused on that international market as well.
Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate all the information you gave to our investors. You're obviously on the stock exchange, OGI. Is that TSX Venture now?
TSX Venture, and then we're in the US on the QX under OGRMF.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I'm sure we'll have you on again soon, and we'll do a recap of how legalization is going and see how everything's been transpiring.
Awesome. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Right. You're back. Patting my back, should I say that?
That was interesting, though, because I hadn't thought about Organigram in quite some time.
Yeah.
They had those
Well,
issues.
they're going through a lot of legal stuff, right?
Yeah, 2 years ago they had that issue with microbuterol. Am I saying that correctly? Anyway, it was a new upcoming system. They had lost their
clenbuterol?
No, that's steroid. But going through, and they lost their organic certification, and now they've just gone through the process of getting that back and pushing forward.
A lot of people
didn't.
It's interesting.
A lot of people didn't think they'd get it.
Yeah, because that's a hard thing to come back from, but they put the work in, and I think they even said, I think it's like 5% of their product is going to be organic. So it's not like a massive amount, but that's going to be a niche for them. And other than that, what is it? T-God, who isn't even growing yet. Who else would have organic cannabis right now? Like an LP.
What do you mean T-God's not growing? You mean selling?
Selling. They're probably growing their small facility.
From what I'm told, they have one of the best growers, T-God. I own none of that stock.
Nor do I. Nor do I.
I picked up some yesterday.
Of course he did, at the low of the day.
I know.
My name's Greg.
Yeah. We're going to have to start getting buy and sell reports showing all these.
I'll let you know.
But no, so looking back at the day, I mean, it's still looking pretty bloody, especially with the indicators. Canopy, 51.94. Aurora, 10.05, so they're above $10. So a free
Well,
at 15.35.
What's concerning is the bulls fought back yesterday, or traders. Today would have been, a great day to show more strength. And I don't know if we're seeing that. So, we're going to talk with our good friend Johnny Mack later.
On this, yeah.
Like to get his
We
opinion.
got him on, eh?
Yeah.
We do,
Okay.
we do. We'll take 2 for the technology side of things.
Oh,
Hopefully it works.
But no, because you got to look at that. And it's important what you said, and he's going to go into more detail about that. You want to see follow through after coming back from such a bloody massacre.
Well, I mean, it would have been nice to get like a nice little 10% pop there on wheat today, with the bulls continuing the buy, right? Or even a 5%. Who knows? The day is not over yet.
Nope.
But
No,
right
it's
now
not.
we're sitting red.
Yeah.
After getting hammered.
Yeah. It's crazy, but going to legalization itself, because it's now a week after we had our whole cannabis legalization episode. Everything was cannabis.
Did you buy any?
I did not know.
Did you buy any
what?
legal cannabis?
No,
And I did not.
So
My
that's
girlfriend
3.
tells me I should.
Yeah.
Yeah. She wants
She
to try
tells me
it
I
out.
need to get
I was
high.
like, well,
You know what I
maybe
got
we will.
though?
Maybe we won't.
Yeah.
You got those, eh?
They put me to bed every night.
The vape pens, and those are still
Illegal.
Are illegal. It's ridiculous that they are.
I would rather touch this than a joint, personally.
Yeah, and they've been having issues. I mean, Canada Post went for a strike halfway through, or they're on a partial strike. Nice. Partial strike for that, but the system's rolling out, and they're showing there's 100,000 sales in Ontario alone. So we're going to see some good numbers, but we have a supply issue, a very big one, and we all knew it was going to happen. I don't think people realize it's going to happen within the first few days. People who are more maybe that's exactly what they expected. But in a clip that's coming up later with Deepak, who's the government relations for CCI, so he knows a lot about what's going on in Canada and the
That'll
world.
be a wicked interview.
There's some really interesting parts in there that he talks specifically on these supply crunches and everything.
Very excited to watch that.
So yeah, a couple in. It's hard. Are we going to break out of it?
Oh, who knows?
Who
Like,
knows?
That's it, right? Like,
Who
I mean,
knows,
every
eh?
company talks
Who knows,
about how
eh?
much that they can grow
Oh, hoser.
and everything
Got a
like that.
Canadian
But
over here.
who knows what companies are going to lose too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just a process that they have to go through.
And it's going to be hard, right? It's going to be hard to know. I mean, I strongly believe, within a year we'll be fine for supply. I really, these facilities they're coming on
Well,
are
some
massive.
people say years.
Could
Like
easily
how
be.
can it be that with
It's
how
so
many
unknown.
cannabis companies there are out there that are growing?
It's so unknown. It's hard to actually know where we're going to go from this. But just in general, though, it's a really interesting step. I mean, you got to think about it. Cannabis is legal all across. Like, people are rolling up joints on the bus and on the TTC, and like it just, for me personally, just going back a few years, it's
Oh yeah.
my teenage
Just walking
years were a
around
lot
with that kind
different.
of stuff, I'd
It was
be
funny.
just sketchy still.
Yeah.
Just be like, who's gonna pull me over?
But I think stuff like that's going to come through.
What,
I think
vaping?
pen, yeah, I think
Yeah,
vape is
like,
gonna
I
be
don't wanna
massive.
smoke
What
cannabis.
was Aurora, right? Aurora's doing that little loophole somehow, where they're not making a vape pen, but they're making the cartridges with the oil in it and just selling the cartridges by itself.
Yep.
And in other places, you can get a pen that fit that cartridge. So I thought that was really interesting.
Well, it's
Pretty smart.
Very smart.
I mean, look, right now the legal market, at least here in Ontario, can't really compete with the black market
Yeah.
when it comes to marketing and branding, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's poop.
Yeah.
It's your favorite word. man.
Your favorite word.
I just can't.
You can tell he's got kids in the house.
If you can you go online, in the gray market, black market, and they will drive to your house and package it and make it look like something you really want to buy, that's what you're competing with.
Yeah.
You cannot deny that. That's what you're competing with. So you have to create something to compete with that,
Yeah.
right? So anyways, my expectations weren't for this to be rolled out and everything to be perfect. This is just big government, legalizing cannabis, like bravo, it's been a big, long time. So they got to do their thing, and they've done it. They've legalized it now. Now we've got to work out the kinks. So hopefully people push for those things, with your local MP. Go in there and talk about cannabis and say, hey, it's legal. But why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Why isn't there?
ridiculous.
Right. So those are now the things that have to unfold. So, even when the supply crunch figures itself out, you're still going to be competing with the black market.
Oh god, yeah.
Right,
For
so-
years.
There's going to be a
Maybe
fight
forever.
in that way. But I also think really what has to happen here is we need to educate people on, the quality testing that goes on in the black market or lack thereof. And now when you think about it, there is a pretty rigorous system here in place to make sure that, there isn't all these pesticides and mold and stuff like that in the cannabis. So personally, I would like now a product, if I'm going to, get involved with cannabis, that, has been tested. Yeah. Doesn't that matter to you?
100%.
Does that matter to you?
Oh, 100%.
Right. So the free market's got to take over and decide what the value should be based on that product and service being provided.
Yeah, I believe it. And that's going to grow, and we're going to jump to Deepak, who's specifically talked about aspects like this and in Canada, across the world. We'll head over to him and see what we had to say about legalization in Canada and abroad.
Perfect.
And we are live today with Deepak Anand, VP of Government Relations with CCI. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Deepak, it's been an absolute monumental last week. October 17th, Canada went fully legal with cannabis throughout the entire country. But there are so many different stories to touch on. All of our investors and viewers right now, we all know what's going on with the market. It's been quite red over the last few days. But the industry itself is just getting started. And I thought we'd bring you on and talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely, yeah. Lots of headlines, certainly a lot of excitement around cannabis legalization. But I mean, there's a lot happening in the background on licensing with Health Canada. There's quite a few things happening around the world with medical cannabis legalization. So happy to talk about that in today's show.
Yeah, well, why don't we start exactly how you started with licensing, because that's a huge concern for not only a lot of these LP hopefuls who have been working for a long time, building their facilities, working with your company, among others, but CCI has always been one of those main brand names that people really want to see connected to their people looking to get through the ACMPR program. But can you go a little bit more into, what's going on with Health Canada right now? Are we getting more coming online? Is there a panic? Like, where do you see things as of this moment?
Well, certainly, if you look at sort of last week, particularly the 15, 16, 17, which was the last few days before legalization, we saw a whole bunch of licenses come on board. In fact, on those last few days, we saw more licenses handed out than any other day since the ACMPR or the MMPR was launched. So that was quite telling and signaling that Health Canada was certainly doing a lot to get as many licenses out of the gates at the very last minute. And there's a lot happening in the background. I mean, Health Canada has hired a battery of people towards licensing to deal with not just the new licensing categories that have come online on the 17th, but also, more importantly, to deal with some of the backlog on applicants that have been waiting in the queue for a very long time. And most importantly, people that are currently either have cultivation licenses that don't currently have sale licenses, or existing LPs that are looking to expand through their second site applications, or are looking simply to expand their current growing rooms. And every time that you've got a new growing room that comes online or a new area that comes online where cannabis is going to be present, you need to apply to Health Canada to get those approvals. So Health Canada is certainly doing a lot in the background. I mean, there's clearly a number of cultivation license holders today that have quite a bit of product actually in stock that aren't allowed to sell it either through wholesale to other licensed producers or directly to the provincial governments. But you can expect over the next few weeks that you will see more sale licenses come out where Health Canada is going to turn these people that have been cultivating cannabis now for many, many months, and in many cases that have access to a variety of product. You'll see that turn online pretty quickly, and that will help ease some of this shortage.
Yeah, and the exact word, shortage. You've already seen some articles. We all knew this was coming, though. We understood it's going to be a process because there's a lot of demand that's in here. And a lot of these companies, actually, especially larger ones, are also looking into export deals as well. So it's not just domestic demand, it's global demand. But it's interesting to hear that because there's probably a lot of people right now, or a lot of companies that do have stock and can't get out there because these articles are saying, there's people out in different provinces where it's the retail stores, they're completely dry. Or you go to other things, they had 20 or 30 different offerings to begin with. Now they've got 5 or 7. Do you see that changing anytime soon? Or do you think this is we're going to have a supply issue for at least 3 to 6 months, if not a little bit longer?
Yeah, I think we'll still have a supply issue for the next little while, and I would say 6 to 8 months if I was to guess. I mean, let's not forget that there's other international markets that are coming online, and the only thing that licensed producers can actually export from Canada is medical cannabis. They can't export non-medical cannabis. So we're certainly going to see, a variety of product being, sort of moved into these areas that are sort of, almost at this point, commanding a high premium on products. So, where you need to sell to a provincially authorized distributor at between $4 and $6 a gram, you can now retail this or wholesale this into European markets at $7, $8, $9 a gram in many cases. So we're certainly seeing a lot of interest from the international markets come online. The UK just announced that as of November 1st, they're going to be allowing for medical cannabis to be prescribed in the UK, and that they're going to be banking on imports to a great extent to kind of address some of their issues. And what we're seeing directly, I mean, yesterday, someone tweeted out there was one licensed producer that had no medical cannabis available for people in Canada, which is quite concerning to a certain extent. But it sort of indicates the pressure that's being placed on some of these licensed producers that have product, particularly those that are able to export, that have something called GMP, good manufacturing practices, that allow them to export into these medical cannabis markets. And what we're seeing is, they're getting, a significant premium on their products. So for the current sort of point where there's a supply crunch, it makes more sense for some of these producers to be exporting some of this medical cannabis rather than supplying it domestically, either to the medical channel or even the non-medical recreational channel.
Yeah, and it's a really good point as well, because the margins are so much higher in places like Germany and soon to be UK, and there's so many different other countries that are coming online. I mean, that's a whole other conversation we can go into about just the global cannabis space and how that's working. But when it comes to actual supply, yeah, if you're a company and you've got the ability to sell something wholesale for $7, $8, $9, or sell retail or wholesale in Canada for $4 or $5, what company is going to be saying, you know what, no, it's going to all stay in Canada? Very few, if not any. They're going to want to export. So it just really goes to show that exports are so important to these Canadian companies, which goes on an overarching theme as well, that these US companies are out there. Trulieve, you've got these massive MPX Bioseucal, these guys are really starting to get a lot of market share out there, and they're making some great revenues. Something Charlotte's Web, the other one I was thinking of, but they still can't export. So it's just interesting, it's a crazy dynamic, but you're saying for the next foreseeable future, we probably are going to see a shortage in Canada, though, which I think many of us were prepared for regardless.
Yeah, it was something that was very much expected, and it's no surprise that we're seeing this supply crunch currently. But I mean, this was kind of predicted and expected all along.
No, exactly. Now, for CCI, how many companies do you currently have on the go for trying to bring through that ACMPR progress? Are you seeing that you're still getting more people apply than approve? Obviously, I can imagine that's true, but are you seeing a trend? Are you seeing a lot more being approved recently, or a lot more applying, or less applying? Is there a trend that's going on right now?
We're certainly seeing a lot more people submitting applications. So on October 17th, the ACMPR was sort of replaced with the Cannabis Act. And what we've seen is there was a number of people that either were what was previously the black market, now start to apply for micro sort of licenses, both on the cultivation and the production side, and in some cases standard cultivators and processors. But really what Health Canada has done on October 17th was issued 10 new classes of licenses. So if you just wanted to be a grower and not worry about all of the other things, including sale and quality assurance and all that stuff, then you don't need to do that anymore. The previous ACMPR was a fully vertically integrated system, so you needed to do everything from sort of grow your crop till the time that you find customers to sell it to, and that would include the marketing and the shipping and all these things, whereas now Health Canada sliced and diced it. So basically, if you just want to be in one side of the value chain, then that's all you can do. If you just want to be a grower, then you can do that. Or if you just want to be sort of on the marketing or sales side, then that's all you can do. So we've certainly been inundated with companies that have been holding out and waiting for this model to launch. But as far as existing applicants are concerned, there's still several hundred people in the queue that have been waiting for a very long time. That we're seeing a lot of movement on with Health Canada, and there are parts of the Cannabis Act that require sort of new information to be sent into Health Canada. There's new security clearance protocols and forms that need to be filled out. So we're quite busy doing that. But Health Canada is certainly very committed to getting this regime on board. They realize that there needs to be more licenses handed out, as much as they want to make sure that sort of the new applicants and new licenses are brought on board, and people that have historically grown in the black market need to be brought on board. They also realize that there's this sort of backlog, if you will, of licenses that need to clear through. So certainly a lot of willingness that we're seeing from Health Canada, and they're pushing along quite well, I would say, and we've certainly been busy, as I can imagine they have been.
Yeah, and I love that too. I love the idea that they're allowing these extra licenses. Pat, I hope I can remember his last name properly, McCutcheon. He's the CEO of MetaPharm. A lot of people, and sorry Pat if I got your last name wrong there, I'm going from memory here. A lot of people really, really were excited to see that they got their oils license without being a cultivator, because a lot of companies are going to be like, you know what? I think either this is going to be saturated very soon with these larger players who have these massive facilities that are being built, not there yet, but going to be built, or they just say, you know what? I don't want to be a part of growing the flower. I think it's going to be a commodity one day. I'd rather extract it and go into the business of CBD oils, THC oils. Maybe you're putting concoctions for drinks. You hear Bruce Linton talking about that all the time. We're currently going through a supply issue with flour. Do you think, though, this will help the government say, you know what, we should look into these distillates. We should look into these other forms that people would rather take or consume cannabis with, whether it's medical or recreation, and they see that as almost like a way out of the supply issue, because now you're going to have multiple avenues to get there?
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that Health Canada is very much considering. I mean, we all know that edibles and concentrates are going to be legalized in October of 2019. So it's something that Health Canada is looking at very closely. And, there's already discussions happening. I think I would expect either by sort of the end of the year or early next year, we'll see draft regulations on edibles and concentrates come out. So, yeah, I mean, it's something that they are very much sort of attuned to. It's something that we can expect coming out very soon. And I think that will help some of these supply issues, these supply crunches sort of be addressed, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And also not even just supply issues. I mean, even just from a consumer, there's a lot of people out there who would much rather go through an oil, a capsule, a spray. There were some sprays out there instead of going to smoking. There's always going to be a stigma around smoking, but also a huge craze I'm seeing everywhere. I know it's probably, it is black market and gray market, but vape pens, they've exploded into the market through these different dispensaries. As someone who follows the industry, do you see that being a really big component of these LPs moving forward, or concentrated vape pens?
Absolutely. I think we already saw some announcements early this week and last week around, people looking at vapes and concentrates. And certainly, I mean, if you look at U.S. states that have legalized cannabis for non-medical purposes, I mean, the big seller is not flour or oil. It seems to be concentrates, vapes, edibles, and those sorts of products. So it's only natural that we'll see that happen here. I mean, if you look at, historically the black market in Canada, and I'm in Vancouver, so I certainly see this firsthand, the products that are available and that are selling are those products, are those vapes, are those concentrates, are those edibles. So, we can certainly expect that, to take firm shape in the legal market here once Health Canada sort of allows for a regulatory pathway for that to happen. And it's no surprise that we're seeing, U.S. companies come to Canada. I mean, sure, the listing and the stock exchange and capital raising is certainly a big factor for them coming here. But what we're seeing is a number of them are getting into IP licensing deals with licensed producers, where they're bringing that expertise and that experience from the U.S., where they've done it, fairly well over the past few years, and saying, hey, let's replicate this in Canada, and let's partner up either with a licensed producer or in some cases do it directly ourselves and kind of bring this to market, because they realize that there's an opportunity here, not just in the Canadian market, but also in the international markets from an export perspective, particularly on those lines that would be considered medical cannabis, which they'd be allowed to export.
Well, exactly. I mean, what's easier, transporting flour that can easily go bad and be damaged, or transport a liquid that's already set, whether it be with a certain, I know a lot of these medical companies and cannabis companies actually are coming up with these different aspects that help it to keep its chemical compound longer, especially when it's in liquid form. So I can imagine it only makes sense if you're doing a case of little capsules of liquid, or you're trying to transport a few kilos of cannabis that's been suppressed in like an air vacuum pack. One's going to have better quality than the other when it gets there.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, even the existing sort of models allow for things like suppositories and other forms of products that, it's been surprising not to see an existing licensed producer look at developing those formulations. I mean, we've seen a few licensed producers like Hydropothecary and Aurora get pretty creative with a sublingual spray and Keef and Shada for a brief period. But I mean, we're clearly seeing a lot of people get creative and come out with these new lines of products that the market, so desperately needs. So, what we'll see in a year from now is going to look drastically different than what we're seeing today. And again, this is not something that's unique to Canada. We've already seen this happen in jurisdictions that have legalized, particularly in the U.S. When you look at California, in particular, I mean, if you want to know the future of cannabis and cannabis products, just go to California. Not so much from a regulatory perspective, but certainly from a product perspective. I mean, on the product development side, California is doing a phenomenal job on product formulations, and we're seeing a lot of very interesting products coming out, including beverages that we've talked about, quite a bit in the Canadian scene, with likes of Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Diageo and some other big bev alcohol companies coming into the space.
Yeah, and I hope so too, because I'm actually speaking. So, I mean, through our community at Follow the Money, we speak to a lot of people, whether it be consumers, investors. We want to find out what people are talking about. But just looking at my Facebook feed and looking at people who, 4 years ago when I started investing in cannabis, like they weren't even anywhere on Facebook talking about it. Now they're experts or they're whatever it be. But some of them are making really good points, though, is that when you look at the market we've created, the black market and gray market can thrive in this. We've got grams of cannabis going for like $18 a gram. The selection is completely like it's old strains, or it's taking it's being sold out really quickly. But the biggest aspect is not having these products, not having these alternatives that these dispensaries they've already got. Not to mention, when you're looking at this and you're looking at the framework of marketing and all of that, how are you ever going to beat a black market dealer when you completely handcuff these LPs into not being able to talk about their products, not being able to offer more products, and then the taxation? A lot of different things piled into that comment there, but the reason I bring that up is that I wanted to ask, do you hear of anything? Are they speaking in government, in our government right now, saying, hey, you know what, we might have gone a little bit too strict on this whole cannabis marketing aspect. We might have to loosen this up.
Look, the intention always was, I mean, we knew very early on from when the task force was formed and the Liberal government came out with this, they said we're going to very strictly enforce this and regulate it, and it will ease over time. And, I don't think we're certainly seeing any relaxation at this point, particularly on the marketing and sales and packaging and branding side. But what we are seeing is, if you look at from a regulatory perspective, I mean, where we were about a year ago and even 2 years ago, a lot of the regulations required for LPs to set up these massive industrial scale laws that were very expensive, to begin with, that have now sort of been taken away. And Health Canada says, okay, we've looked at this from a risk-based scenario, and we realize that you don't need to have these industrial laws that are level 7, 8, 9 in many cases, and that's a bit of an overkill. And so they've sort of relaxed those requirements. We've seen the ability where you needed to have a security cleared person called a PIC in every room where cannabis was present, to now saying, okay, well, you just need one person per site. So we're certainly seeing a lot of proactive developments from Health Canada based on risk-based approach, where they've seen this program for the past 4 years. They've said, okay, well, these are some things that I think we probably went too aggressive on, and we can afford to now step back on that. And I think we'll see the same on the sort of marketing and enforcement side. I think once we realize that, look, we've achieved most of our basic objectives with legalization, one of them being keeping cannabis out of the hands of kids, then we will be able to sort of relax this over time and kind of, roll this back. And I think Health Canada and the federal government completely realize that some of these LPs are being handcuffed, particularly when you look at the black market. And now the black market is not really dispensaries that are selling product illegally. It's actually websites that are selling cannabis online that will deliver to you. I mean, they're completely in the shadows, and it's very hard to sort of go after them and aggressively enforce them. When from an average consumer perspective, you could sit back in your home and Canada Post will deliver you your legal cannabis on one side and your illegal cannabis on the other. And in many cases, consumers don't know the difference between the two. So we will see that relaxation over time. I think as we look at edibles legislation coming in, we look at these other forms of products coming in, I think the next thing Health Canada will start to look at is how to sort of, not just eliminate the black market on one hand, but allow for the illicit market to compete with that.
Why don't we call it there? I had a good question for you, but it's just eluded me. But I'm sure we'll get you back on here many times to come, because there's a lot of different questions to ask as we continue to go into legalization and how it's progressing and the issues that come up, but also the things that really went well. So I'm sure we'll have more conversation about this very soon as well.
Indeed, many more conversations to happen. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, my good sir. Take care. And we're back.
Why do you gotta do it to me?
Well, that was awesome, and I love talking to people like Deepak who know so much about the industry and what's happening. Love it. Thank you for coming on, Deepak.
Thanks, Deepak.
Absolutely. Thanks, Deepak.
What?
Real
Don't mock me like that.
But no, it's just interesting, like how much it's spreading. And we were talking when we first started the show today about, Canada will go out and start getting into these other countries and start getting the know-how, all those different aspects. He's literally saying our know-how is going out and helping these countries pioneer their cannabis programs going into medical and beyond.
That gentleman is in high demand.
Yes, he is.
In the world.
Yeah,
The whole world.
He is always, every time I either send an email or try to get him on the show, he'd be like, oh, I'm in Germany, oh, I'm in here.
Yeah.
Oh, he's just all over the place. And
You must be a big deal for him to respond to you.
no, I think he's just very nice. But it was good. I like that because it's we can speculate all we want for these different elements. It's people like himself and these other individuals who are really entrenched in the legal side of cannabis and speaking to the government. They're the ones who actually have a better clue of what's going on. So hearing that, I feel like it's much more definitive than just us speculating and asking what price canopy is going to be at by the end of the year.
Exactly.
And just guessing.
Yeah, no, he's an insider.
Yeah, no, it's good. I love it, love it. Hopefully we get some more. And we got a nice clip that's going to be going on next week with Pat Moher as well.
Patty.
Ethical Image, where they
It's his
actually
birthday
had
today.
Happy birthday, Pat! If you're listening right now, watching, happy birthday.
What?
He's got
I'll
some
send you
clips
a
on that.
really funny meme later.
Yeah, but he's got more CCI stuff coming for us next week. He was able to do a lot more of what he does: photography,
Great story.
videography, planting trees, all three.
From Matica to, where was he last?
Muskoka Grown, doing stuff for Muskoka Grown, and now he's conference to conference. Now he's actually working alongside CCI.
But it all started with Matica.
Yeah.
Isn't everything?
It all started with Matica.
That's where everything starts from Matica. Everything.
Everything started with Scarfy.
I think his wedding started first.
He was supposed to be on the show today, but I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
He's not coming on.
Yeah.
What's going on, Boris?
I don't know. But we're going to switch gears into real estate. So we had Matt Dyke come back on. We talked about a lot of the interest rates rising up and all these different elements that are happening. That was a really good clip. We let that run for a while because it's got a lot of different elements that if you're a homeowner, if you're investing, if you're thinking about buying a home, we touched up on a lot of different elements going through, and I thought it was really interesting.
I want to do a weekly segment with Matt. Not Mike.
Yeah.
Matt.
I said Mike on the, I know his name's Matt. I'm sorry, Matt.
You owe him dinner.
I do. I owe you dinner and a beer. But let's go over that clip now. And we are live back with Mike and Karl.
Hello.
Nice to have you back. Appreciate it.
Good to be back.
It's okay to have
Nice
you
to
back.
have
Just okay.
someone.
No, I kid, of course. No, awesome, man. I love it. Because this is an area that we don't talk enough about. So many people are so enamored on cannabis and mining and these are real estate and what's happening right now with POLA's raising the interest rate today. These are things you need to keep your eye on.
Absolutely. Markets are very fluid as usual, and I think that we can do a little bit of dive into what that means for all of us locally in Canada in terms of how the rates are going to affect people. It's definitely going to push some sectors, and others it's going to have a negative impact.
Yeah.
So.
And where do you want to start today? We've got a few things lined up.
Well, I think it'd be great to talk, especially since last week was a big week in this country with legalization. I think it'd be appropriate to talk about how legalization is, for what we know right now, is impacting the mortgage world and real estate world. Yeah. And there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of unknowns, I guess I should say, out there right now. And I think where a good place to start would be talking about what are the positions of some of the major players in the market. So what I mean by that would be looking at our mortgage insurers. We have 3 in Canada. We have CMHC, Genworth Canada, and Canada Guarantee. And interestingly, only one of them made a statement, and that was CMHC. They came out and said that there would be no changes to their policy, and that lenders would need to continue to report any type of grow-up issues that they came across during the normal transaction of issuing a mortgage, through appraisals, that type of thing. But they don't look at any changes. The other 2 were completely silent, which is interesting. And on top of that, no lender has actually made an official statement about how growing 4 plants at home or the use of marijuana would affect their mortgage.
Because a lot of people have been asking that question specifically. You know, yes, you're going to be able to grow cannabis now all across the country, but are you going to be allowed to do it in rentals? Are you going to be able to do it in condos or in houses? Well, why don't we start with houses? Because you've put some awesome data together for us talking about different surveys that are going on. But when it comes to the insurers, you said, 2 of them have said nothing. One of them said, they just came out with a statement that nothing's really changed.
Right.
But there's an important thing that you said, something about illegal. You're not allowed illegal drugs, but now it's not illegal, so you're allowed to grow?
Well, so I mean, part of having home insurance, having a mortgage, you need home insurance. Anytime, when you've gone through the mortgage process, make sure you get your home insurance before we can close the deal. The lender, the insurer, make sure you have to have that. So there's 2 types of language, from my understanding, in most people's home insurance. And one would say illegal narcotics, which covered cannabis up until the 17th. Yeah. And the others will specify individual drugs. So for those insurers and people who have policies that indicate that they have illegal narcotics, realistically, that's a gray area now, because obviously cannabis is no longer illegal. So that would be one spot to look at for sure. It's kind of like what's on the books is on the books. And as one of my colleagues put it on a call we had earlier this week, he said, 1 plant growing at home could be perceived as a grow-op. Yeah. Now, that seems very extreme. Yeah. And after speaking to a couple lender reps, now again, it's not an official statement, but I was talking to one of the major bank reps in the Durham region yesterday, and he said, look, our bank is not going to worry about 1 plant, but if we see more than what is being prescribed by the federal guidelines, then we will definitely report it. Yeah. Yeah. So people need to think twice about that in terms of when they go to get a mortgage, because that's that part of it. And then I also think it's important because right here in Toronto, condos are obviously a big machine, as they are in a few other, Montreal as well. So all of the condo associations are moving with, they're scrambling because they're calling their lawyers and they're getting their guidelines changed to ban cannabis, with the exception of medical, which they have to accommodate. Yeah. So if you live in a condo, even though you have a legal federal guideline, look for that to be changed.
Well, so this stuff will get sorted out in court at some point.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at how the rule came across, they did give condo associations the legal right to make their own determination. So, if there's enough members that want that, just in terms of policing it and trying to figure that out, you'll get into a lot of individual units could potentially have future litigation against each other if they're impacting each other, right?
That's Well, we're going to have to get some judgments here in court, see what the precedent is going to be.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you got a stat here. Fires occur 26% higher in homes that grow cannabis, which is like that's a significant number.
But they're doing it. Well, they were doing it illegally.
Yes.
And now we have technology coming out to do this at scale for people, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, we can't really use those numbers.
No, and I think that number also would reflect somebody who is doing, to your point, an illegal grow up in the basement. They've got the whole house jacked up with plants. A lot of people use LED lighting. There's lots of safer methods for 1 to 4 plants. So that's another issue.
Yeah, now you have entrepreneurs coming out with things so you can do this at home, and it's going to be tested, and so. Yeah, this is such a gray area. Interesting conversation for sure, but there's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go into some of the stats though? Because we were looking into, does this affect property values? And a lot of people who own a house, who are looking for a house, investing in a house, they want to know this question. or the answer to this question. It's interesting because there's some stats in here that really stick out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a recent survey done by Zukasa online. They had about 1,300 respondents, and looking at it, 52% of all home buyers would think twice about buying a home that had been used to grow even legal amounts of marijuana. That's an interesting stat. But near 64%, or nearly 2/3 of homeowners polled, said smoking marijuana inside a house would reduce the value. And again, you can break it down in a whole bunch of different areas, but it's really going to depend on which age group you fall into as well. So millennials seemed to find they were the group that seemed least affected by it, where your Gen X and your baby boomers felt at a much higher rate, about 59% were opposed, only 38% of millennials. And of course, we won't look at Gen Zs right now because we don't need to go there yet. But it's definitely going to have an impact, and I think this is going to be an evolution. I think we're only in week 2, right? Yeah. So we have to see how this plays out with public opinion. There's also a break with renters. Of course, renters are feeling they're happy about using it or growing it. They think it's fine. Where of course landlords are overwhelmingly opposed to it, and of course they can put provisions in leases. We already talked about condos, but they can definitely make those changes to eliminate it.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't know if I disagree with them, to be honest. I mean it's hard.
Yeah, if I was renting out a condo or a house, I don't want people smoking in my house. Yeah. So why would I be okay with cannabis? It's nothing against cannabis. It's just like you're smoking it. Right. That's how I would view it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think that part of why I wanted to kind of point this, at least what the thoughts are right now, is because we do have a bit of a case study south of the border that we can look at. There's a few years of legalization in a handful of states down there, and we do have some stats from Colorado and a few of the other prominent states that indicate that residential house values went up. Now, some of the studies, I was reading into them, they are looking at a very tight-knit area, so was it a broad enough study? Not sure, but it was about an 8% increase, and that was from about 2014 onward. Interesting enough, there are areas when legalization came in which did affect values, and that was looking at a grow operation versus a dispensary versus a retail type of scenario. Yeah. And I think the further you go down the list, it indicates that the value is impacted more. So yeah, grow-ups, I think it was 8.4% negative value in Colorado as opposed to the rest of the counties in Colorado, and then only 3.8% if it's a medical dispensary, and then just under 1% if it's a retail store.
That's still, if those stats prove out, and it was done with due diligence, but that's still at 8.4%. That's a significant amount of your house.
And you know where it came from? It was out of people from out of state moving to a state that had legalization for the most part. Yeah. So they found that people wanted to come into that environment. And there was also some underlying stats in there as well, because where there was legalization, they also found that violent crimes went down. Okay. So that was cool. Which is very good. Now again,
so more cannabis, less fighting.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, however, there's a counter side to that, which is especially most of these states. Well, a lot of these where it's more prominent, like Colorado and California, as an example. There's some illegal activity coming from the East Coast in the states, which basically, at any means necessary, they are coming across and they are breaking into different places, not necessarily facilities, but trying to get their hands on legal marijuana to take it back to states where it's illegal and sell it on the black market. So once the states finally expands their coverage, they will push that out. But murders are down, things are like that in those areas. And that goes for like California, and the study also touched on parts of border cities in Mexico as well were also reduced. Yeah.
So people get high and don't fight.
Yeah, apparently. That's
right. I got it.
Well, you've also eliminated a whole criminal organization, or you're trying to eliminate it. So all these cannabis dealers on the black market, there's some good gray markets area, the dispensaries that I'm glad we're starting to work with and whatever it be, but there's also other people who don't just sell cannabis though, they sell other things. If you eliminate that desire or that advantage of being able to sell that, hopefully, you've eliminated people from entering into drug trafficking, because that's usually where it starts.
It's
Something
another
smaller,
interesting topic. I mean, so people from other states where it's illegal are going to legal states where it's easily accessible and are trying to grab it, take it back to the black market and sell it.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not hurting each other.
Yeah, yet.
Well, when's the last time you saw somebody, steal a beer from somebody?
Yeah.
Right? Think about it in those terms.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. It does happen often. You'll always see someone there. You go in your fridge and you knew you had 5 left and now there's 4.
Yeah.
My roommate definitely stole that from me.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
But on the exact point though, it was interesting because there's a huge article that was going out in Canada where there was a robbery. They only called it a legal grow-op, where the people there were tied up, the cannabis was stolen, it was plastered all over the news, and then you look at it, they say it was a legal outdoor grow-op, which meaning they're not an LP, they're an MMAR. I'm just making that, because clearly LPs can't be outdoor.
Big distinction.
So
Yeah.
I'm trying to see who this would be.
Right.
But that's not the same as an LP. We've been
So
doing
you had a sensational headline,
over the fact
and the
that
story doesn't really meet the headline.
correct.
Typical clickbait.
Absolutely.
So now everyone's gonna be like, oh my goodness, there should be armed robberies now. They're all gonna be stealing this cannabis. If you try to go into a cannabis facility, you need a fob to get to every single door. I've been stuck in one once because I
We
lost
have
a
been stuck
person.
in one, that is
And
correct.
we couldn't get anyone's attention, and we couldn't get out of the
Right.
building because we didn't have a fob with us.
And Health Canada could watch us.
They have
actually
it at
could see
any
us
time.
in the room
So it's
if they wanted to.
so to anybody watching, if you did see that story, that is a shame, but it's an outdoor grow. They do not have 24-hour surveillance like an LP do. They do not have security guards on hand. The security of the building is so much different.
Cannabis is taken over.
Yeah.
We're talking about real estate, and it's basically all about cannabis.
I know.
So
you see where our minds go?
Let's get into the REIT, the cannabis REITs, and REITs getting into cannabis.
Yeah.
I know Matt has some good data on that, or some interesting.
Well, and so I was looking at it, and because we do, again, we have this, we do have a bit of a case study south of the border, and looking at what's going on here, in terms of really the cannabis industry is turning into a massive real estate play, because the amount of real estate required for grow operations, for retail facilities. So, but most of it would be in the light industrial, commercial properties. We've seen some of the bigger players in Canada, like Canopy, buy their own properties outright, where a lot of the other ones need their liquid cash and flow to be able to do business. So it's easier for businesses to have somebody else own it and they rent it back. And that's a big trend that's been going on for the last 3 or 4 years in the States. Now, I did just pick this stat up just before we decided to sit down here. In 2018, 8.7 million square feet as of September of facilities, grow facilities in Canada have been taken over, and there's another 6.4 million on the books available. Now, put it in perspective, 8.7 million square feet seems like a lot. It's equivalent to Amazon's headquarters in Seattle. Yeah. Right? But that's just giving you an idea. And so warehouse space in the States, when we look back on what's been going on there, went up by 60% in terms of the cost of it, and renewals on leases went up by 25%.
Wow.
It's massive. There was one company in Boston where they're now paying to the tune of $2 million a month in rent. Right? So there's
crazy.
It's
crazy,
it's
man.
that type of thing. So Innovative Industrial Properties, Calix, and First Industrial are 3 of the players in the States. They have properties in California, Colorado, basically wherever it's legal. But they're focusing on the 20,000 to 50, 60,000 square foot facilities. And it's interesting, we were just talking about security. I don't know if the security requirements are there in the States for warehouses, so that might be a bigger issue for them. But yeah, those plays down there are, those areas come with baggage too, because they're also, usually they're going into parts of town that are already devalued. They were just, decrepit buildings. And so now, that's why you're going to see a bump in value, because now there's actually something worthwhile, and people move in to work there, right? So
Yeah, it looks
Creating
Smith
jobs,
Falls.
creating opportunity, that cannabis plant.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, Smith Falls is the poster child, if you want to call it, or the token of that specific thing, where they went into the Hershey Center. Nothing was going on around it. This is Tweed, and now it's that they brought that city alive again,
Right?
Because they're bringing in jobs, they're
Yeah,
bringing in people, and you.
Yeah,
It's
and then
amazing.
you have like that huge. They
Yeah.
bought the Kraft building
Yeah,
in Belleville, is it? I don't know.
I believe so. I believe so.
Massive Kraft building. That's probably bigger than the Canopy one in Smith Falls.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
But don't quote me on
definitely.
that. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Anyway.
no, it definitely is. Yeah.
So again, cannabis REIT. Actually, we have some contacts in that business. So if anyone is interested in that, let me know.
Yeah. I reached out when I saw these different notes. We were talking about this. I'm like, oh, I forgot. I reached back out to them again to see about getting one of them on the show to talk about a cannabis
Yeah.
REIT specifically.
Now, those companies that you mentioned, are they publicly traded?
Yes.
Okay.
I know that I did take a look at innovative industrial properties because there was a big kind of focus on them. I think they're being traded at about $44 is their share price right now, and they have a huge portfolio and they keep acquiring properties at a fairly rapid.
You know
pace.
what? We should get someone on from one of those companies, and they can go over their business model, and we can go over it from an investor standpoint on how to, look at those companies and sort of assess them. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But let's get away from the cannabis stuff because, again, today we had a rate hike.
Yep.
So what are you expecting now for rate hikes moving forward? More, well, I'll let you touch on it.
Sure. Well, Bank of Canada made their official announcement as everybody expected for the most part. So the key interest rate went up from 1.5 to 1.75, and so 25 basis points seems to be the normal run. And what seemed a little bit different in the announcement today was that the language, and everybody always analyzes what Stephen Pulls puts out, but previously it's always been gradual. They've always talked about gradual increases. And this one seemed to change, and most experts are predicting that we're going to see it to speed up a little bit. And he has, Pulls has this philosophy that we need to get to a neutral state. And neutral state for him is about 2.5 to 3.5% on the key rate. So because of that, we're likely going to see at least 3 rate increases next year. And that still just gets us into that beginning of that band. So that key rate then applies to our prime rate, which drives our variable mortgages and other things. And so basically now we're at 3.95 for a variable rate before you get your discount from the lender.
Yeah.
So this would get us around 5-ish for someone that had maybe good credit, can go to an A lender next year on 3 more rate hikes?
Yeah, you're going to get it. Yeah, you're definitely going to be in that range.
Which would be more of a normal interest rate historically.
It is, and what it allows Bank of Canada to do, so again, the neutral zone is what he refers to as home, because it gives him some flexibility to be able to, if the market slows down, if the economy takes a turn, and there is some anticipation that in the next 2 years that we're going to see a slowdown south of the border. So there's predictions that the U.S. is going to go into a recession at the end of 2020 because by then those Trump tax cuts will start to wear off. The spending that they were doing initially is going to wear off, and you got to go down. And I think we were discussing, off camera earlier, that's just the normal cycle of the market. Yeah. And so Canada wants to be positioned in a way that we can react. If we need to stimulate, then we can talk about reducing the rate. Right now, though, they also feel, they made a comment that they felt that the mortgage rules are actually, people are becoming accustomed and being able to manage that debt load. Although, there are individual stories that don't say that at all, but that's what the Bank of Canada feels right now. And so I think the average debt per person right now in this country is $23,000. That's the debt load if we all carried it.
Yeah.
So this would be why the stress test came in.
Yes.
They basically were factoring this in.
Yeah, no, they're very happy with what's happened with the stress test. It really has tried to stop people that probably shouldn't be buying and keeping them in the rent department, but that's creating a new issue.
Yeah, now people can't get homes.
Is there room in this market for speculators in real estate, the flippers? Are they being, if you're a speculator in real estate, and a lot of these people in the GTA were just buying properties. I know people that were making a killing, and they weren't even really doing too much work on the inside. Just every month, the values were going up significantly, right? If you had the right team, if you can avoid some of the fees. But now, what should speculators be doing in real estate? Should they be trying to find rental properties and fixing them up? And like, what do you do if you're a speculator in real estate? Where would you move now?
Well, I mean, you're always looking for ideally, and I think there's room for us to dig deep on this in another conversation. But there's definitely, you always want to look for a property that nobody wants. Really, that's what you want. And ideally, if you can get if you know what that value of that property will be once you've done what you need to do to get it up to snuff, and you've done your improvements. And typically, what you want to say to a speculator, they're going to go in and they're going to use private money to fix it, buy it, and fix it up, and then they're going to refinance it traditionally. So now they've got it refinanced at the higher rate, and they can take their initial investment back out. That's just kind of the standard play, and then move from there. So, you're going to have more people looking for rental spaces because of what we just talked about a second ago. And one interesting stat, and we talked about this in our last meeting, right here in King Street in Toronto, I think condos are selling at up to $1,600 a square foot.
Yeah, it's crazy. Right? It's absolutely...
So think about people buying those and then turning around and renting them, right? And supply is already...
Oh, yeah. Anybody that was loading up on condos in the last 5-7 years, which I know some people that were, just any pre-construction condo they were getting in with like groups of people, they're doing really well. Yeah. Like really well.
Now there was something else that I read which was kind of interesting. I don't know if this philosophy or this thought is everybody's buying into it, but our tech industry is making great strides here in Canada, and I think we created somewhere in the neighborhood of about 28,000 jobs this year, which is more than San Francisco, Washington, and Seattle combined.
I read something about this.
82,000 tech jobs in the last 5 years. So I mean, think about if you read the news, I think Google Sidewalk, Uber, Microsoft, Shopify, they're all setting up shop here in Toronto. Yeah. And so from that perspective, we're number 2 in North America, number 4 in the world for tech, and then combine that with being number 3 in North America for the financial sector. Those individuals coming in that are going to have high-paying jobs are going to potentially make another real estate bump in the next 1 to 2 years.
Interesting.
Again, all of this goes back to Toronto.
Yes.
Notice how we didn't say Edmonton.
Love the Oilers, but no.
Lots of other places I could have mentioned. I'm not trying to pick on them.
No.
But so we're in this state of getting higher rates, right? So the prices of a house should come down because now when you go to get approved for a mortgage, the bank is taking more, correct, of what your available credit would be?
Well, yeah, I mean, so we just hit a 4-month stop on the sale price. So, the 4-month trend that was there in terms of the going up in price, it just cut off in September. And listings went up. So,
so
listings jumped quite a bit, like about 28%. So listings went up and prices stunted.
A good friend of mine has a house in Whitby, Ontario. I know you're very familiar with that area. In a very nice area in Whitby, which is already considered a nice place to live. He can't sell his house. And so he just readjusted his price. They haven't even had an offer. And last year, the beginning of last year, I mean, he could have sold this house. Some people would have walked in there and be like, I'll give you whatever you want, with no, no terms.
No conditions.
No conditions, right.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's just flipped.
We just had both sides of a coin.
Yeah, and the scary thing in my opinion is that we're not talking about historically high rates here. We're talking about normal rates, man. Yeah. And people are just like in debt, and they're looking and they go, can I afford this? So we're definitely still in an adjustment phase, in my opinion, unprofessional opinion, in this awkward place. So it sounds like if you're in Toronto, this is where you have these job growth, you have people that have good salaries here. I understand how this market is maybe going to get a bump, but you talk about Whitby, where prices have gone significantly higher over the last couple of years. They don't have the jobs to support that. There's maybe going to be an adjustment. And typically, when real estate goes down, doesn't it start from the suburbs and crunch in? So if you look at Toronto going out, Yonge Street would be that medium line. So if you're on Yonge Street, the further you go out, you would get hit first. Is that accurate?
Well, you know, theoretically, I would say yes, but the reality is in the GTA, because you get more for your dollar in the suburbs, you're going to see downtown is downtown. Downtown's got a draw. You're always going to pay a premium for being here, right? In terms of what that means and what you get for it. You know, we talked about it. You go east, not so much west. You go east in the GTA, and you will get more of a property. You know, be able to still get a good value.
Mm-hmm. So, what I'm thinking is, because is it safe to say that it's slower out east right now?
It has slowed down, yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So people, I think the obvious thing here would be, and I could be wrong, would be that people out east need to look at it and go, I can't sell my house. Well, how do you sell your house? I need to hit a price where someone wants to come in and can afford my house. Mm-hmm. So maybe, you know, like my buddy, for an example, they're not selling it because it's not priced to what the market wants to pay.
Yes.
So maybe some people aren't sure if they value a home right now. Maybe they'd rather rent. Right? Or they're waiting for the market for these sellers to go, yeah, I'm going to come down to my price.
Well, so as I just said, listings over September increased it by 26%. That's actually in Durham. So now you've got more choice. You now have a buyer group that is saying, I don't have to run and pick the first thing because I'm not in competition like I was before.
Yeah.
So you're getting more qualified buyers. And again, to your point, if the number one rule in real estate, if you're not priced right, it's not you're going to sell, and it's going to set days on the market increase, and people see it and they use it against you. Now in markets where things like in Toronto, you'll still have people who will bring you offers. They'll see a price and they could still lowball you. That's fine. But when you get into the outer suburbs, for whatever reason, the philosophy is a little bit different. They wait it out. They let the cycle happen. They want to be able to use that conversation to say, you've been on the market for 30 some odd days, and we've seen 2 price adjustments, and you're still not getting a bite. Mm-hmm. It's not that your property's not good, it's you're priced wrong. And you also have this hangover for sellers who believe that, you know, some of them, rightly so, have obligations in the background that they need a higher sale price. But there's others who still believe they can sell what they were doing the last 2 summers, and it's just not the case anymore.
It's not the case.
You know, and there are, you know, I see it all the time, obviously firsthand. If you price it right and you show the value of that house, it'll get sold, and it can get sold fairly quickly.
Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on and going over all these different things.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people, like we said, not many people invest when you look at the grand scheme of things, but almost everyone either owns a home, rents a home, hopefully, or looking to buy a home.
Yes.
So we appreciate you coming on and all these different things. You'll be on again.
Yes.
Because we want to keep
Matt will
looking
be
at
on
this
a
track.
lot. We should try to have Matt
Love
on
us.
weekly.
Yeah.
I want to see a real estate segment every week.
Oh, I'd love to come back.
I love real estate, man.
Well,
I also love this rock, but we'll talk about that later.
Talk about it later.
I think we all love that rock.
Pretty heavy.
Exactly.
See, look, I can. Oh, there's my paper. Not gonna.
There you go.
It's a great
Well,
paperweight.
appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. We'll talk again soon.
Cheers.
And there's the rock.
Yeah.
The exact same thing we
Trying
were
to see if
talking
I can
about.
get the light on your forehead.
Yeah. Blind me while on a live. No, it was really nice, Matt, coming down here. Being able to talk about this stuff, it's important to look at all the different elements of investing, and clearly real estate's one of them.
Mm-hmm. We need to do a weekly real estate segment.
Yep.
There's some really smart people we know in real estate.
Make sure I just muted myself there. Well, we've got someone on our Skype right now who's going to be able to go over different TA analysis and everything that's going on.
Johnny Mac.
Johnny Mac back again.
Hey, John.
Gentlemen, how are you?
We're good. The markets kind of look like poo.
Yeah, indeed. I'm back off of vacation and I've come back to a bit of a SHIT storm, you could say.
Okay.
So interesting times.
I see you have CCW up here. A lot of speculation that news was going to come out today, and people even indicating sort of what the news would be. Has the news come out yet?
I haven't seen it hit the wire yet, Karl, but I am keeping an eye on it. The trading is interesting. It's been, to me, one of the more interesting charts lately. Can probably bring it up here. Oh, there it is. I actually have it up already. So can you guys see that okay?
Yep.
Is that chart displaying? Yeah. Okay. So, you know, we've been in a correction phase after sort of a nice long uptrend, and it's been consolidating. It's given back quite a bit of its gains, as you can see. But, you know, some of the things that I found interesting when I looked at it, if I annotate it here, you know, we're seeing a divergence in momentum in favor of the bulls. So we made a, you know, we made a lower high, or sorry, a lower low here, but when it comes to momentum, we actually made a higher low, so that's a bullish divergence. We also made a lower high here, but we happen to make a higher high here. So again, we're seeing some bullish divergence in momentum. So that's always interesting. For me, that's, you know, something I kind of look for. And that, I believe, was actually, if you guys can see, I'll sort of zoom out on the screen, maybe it'd make it easier for people to see, but that was actually confirmed on the moving average oscillator, like your momentum oscillator. So I use PPO instead of MACD, but again, you can see we made again the lower low here, but it wasn't confirmed, and we actually had a trend line crossover. We're back above zero, first time in a while, so things are looking good for CCW. I would say obviously that's sort of, you know, that tells me the market is kind of excited. I don't know if there's a leak of news of exactly what news is coming out, but it's certainly showing some excitement in the market. Another thing to note too, some of the highest volume days we've seen in a while have been big bull moves where we've had a close near the high. So these guys right here, see these two volume spikes, and we have these nice candles coming into this trend. So I like it. Technically wise right now, I think it's strong, where it's just sort of consolidating in a fairly tight range right there. And if you actually watch the trading, the battle has been sort of around the 63, 64 level, and I think that's what the chart was saying as well. So every time it gets up here, you get some selling pressure. And what I expect is happening, guys, is we're probably getting some warrants exercised. I did bring up the market capitalization chart on that. So this is just a listing of all your shares outstanding on the stock, and you can see that it's actually slowly creeping up. So towards the end of June, early July, we were around 63 million. They did do a financing, I believe, about 2.2 million shares, but you see we're actually over 10 million shares gained. So there are some warrants hitting the market. That would be my best guess for what we're seeing here in the trading. You're seeing a lot of anonymous shares hitting the market, especially at 63. Yesterday there was a lot of, you know, iceberg orders. You know, the sellers kept showing up, and to me that looks like warrant holders slowly bleeding out into the market. You know, so far there's been enough buyers to soak that up. So you know, now it comes down to, is the news going to excite the market? And as always, I think the important for people to understand that expectations play a very big role. When the market has high expectations, it takes really good results to push the stock. So that's, you know, one thing to be aware of if you're, you know, if you hold CCW long. I happen to hold a very small position, not a big position, but I do own some. But one thing to, you know, to always factor in is, you know, are people buying in here just on expectation of news? You know, if the news doesn't excite them, a sell-off is always possible. We kind of saw that on Garibaldi. And I do know just there are a lot of traders in CCW as well. That's another thing to be mindful of, the trader mindset. Certain groups on the internet, they're getting in cheap. They sort of get a heads up that news is coming, and they're going to be selling the news almost all the time. So that's going to give you a lot of selling pressure as well. So that's, you know, you need some solid news to sometimes. Yeah,
it's scary because you have these warrants hitting the market, and you've got these traders, you know what I mean? So I mean, and then you're talking about expectations. This is definitely worrisome.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're two, I wouldn't call them red flags, but they're yellow flags. It's something to be mindful of. If you're holding position in the stock, just be sure, you know, be aware that there's some trading groups out there They are holding a lot of stock. They're sort of, aggressively promoting it. So, hopefully for everybody that's long on CCW, the news is good. It surprises to the upside. I would say it is ripe for a move up. I think if it breaks this range, you have a bit of a resistance here in the high 60s, and then we could easily get well into the 70s, and then you sort of have this resistance area at the top. So we had 86, 85, and 90. So sort of between 85 and 90, we call that a resistance band. And that would be the area that we'd want to eventually break. If you're a bull, that would be exciting. We'd be into sort of blue sky territory. So it'll be interesting to see if the news sort of exceeds the market expectations and how that all plays out.
So if we back this off, can we look at a 6-month chart?
That is a 6-month chart.
Okay, I just couldn't see the bottom.
Yeah.
So basically,
Yeah,
I think that last financing was at 20 cents with 30 or 35 cent warrants. Is that accurate? So back in May.
Okay. I don't know the answer off the top of my head on that one.
Okay, I'm going to make an assumption that's what it was. I could be wrong, so please don't quote me. But if you go back to early May, these are the type of opportunities we want right here, because you get groups of people, smart money getting in around 20 cents in a PP with warrants at 35 cents with strong promotion behind it, hitting a top. Did we hit 90 cents?
It hit 90 cents, yeah.
90 cents is our top, and now everybody's selling, sitting on their risk-free warrants around 35 cents. So they're basically at a double right now. This is the type of situation you want, friends. Down here, around 20 cents. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, obviously anyone in that financing did well, and yeah, they definitely have an opportunity to take off their initial capital. So if you're putting capital into these raises with warrants, you get that capital out. If it's after a profit, it's bonus, even if it's risk-free essentially. So you're not obligated obviously to exercise warrants. If things are working out, you can exercise. If they're not working out, there's no obligation to do so. So it's kind of the perfect situation. We saw a little bit of that discussed with Garibaldi. Warren Irwin came out and basically said, I'm out of the stock. All my free trading shares are out of the stock. And now I'm sitting risk-free on warrants. So, Warren Irwin, Garibaldi, if things pan out the way everyone, long on Garibaldi hopes they do, he has that exposure. And if things don't pan out well, which obviously I hope is not the case, then he's not going to lose any money. So, yeah, smart money likes to preserve their capital or manage their risk, and the warrants, getting in on these financings, obviously it gives you that opportunity to still participate in the upside, but with basically zero downside exposure. You're not exposed to the risk.
Do you want to switch gears and maybe we'll check out the weed chart, because that's our sector leader in cannabis. We've been hammered here the last couple days. What are we looking at? Close to a 40% retrace to the downside. Sector wide, I'd say, is probably a pretty good number to throw out there. Would you say, Brandon?
Easily.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah. So from the high, Karl, from the high of where weed hit a couple weeks ago to the low of yesterday, that was a 37% retracement. So it's pretty significant for sure. Seen a lot of these cannabis plays give back a lot of their gains. I would say Canopy has probably held up better than most. Yesterday we had an interesting, after a sharp sell-off, we had an interesting rebound, and the stock opened way down. We were right at the 100-day moving average. So you would look for that to be support. And actually, if you look at the chart, what we've probably seen, we've been able to pivot our old support to resistance, basically. So, this would have been back in June, where it hit a high in the high 40s, and it bounced back. And now you see on the way up, it tested that, and we basically held that as support. So that was sort of an expected support area. And especially with the stock gapping down that much, so it closed up above, would have been what, 54.50 area, and then we were opening under $50. It opened around 48 and change. That's
John,
a big gap down. Yes.
I want to interrupt you because you did mention you hold CCW, and I think news has just come out. So if you want to look at it, go for it. Brandon and I can take over here for 2 minutes. Want to respect the fact that you have an open position, and you might want to act on that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll take a quick look if you guys want to chat away.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, we'll switch over if you want to put. I don't know if we can put the NDI over just to put the
let's leave
live
it up.
L2 of it.
Oh, okay. If you could just leave a live L2 of CCW up. Well, no, he's got to look. He's got to look at the news. Let's not worry
that's
about
fine. I got it up there. You guys you should be able to see it now.
Okay, thanks, John.
Oh, we're gonna go back there. Perfect.
Well, I guess we're gonna find out here, Brandon. If
Well,
there's
I'm gonna watch CCW because I have an open position on it as well.
This is cool, live TV.
Yeah, just as should we read the news?
So look at that. You got a huge. You got a lot of stock to get through at 66 cents.
Yeah, and 67 as well.
Well, why don't you? Do you want to read the news out?
Yeah, I'm just looking at if they're dumping this or not. Because what did it get up to today? I hadn't been looking. The high 67 was the high today. Blew right through that, so it's not anywhere near that now. No real bids are coming in from this.
No. Well, read the news. Can you pull that up, Brandon?
It should be in our chat rooms by now. One sec. Live, coming from you from Toronto.
Hey, you know what? This is amazing. You're not going to get this on BNN. We've got a guest with amazing
Canada
content.
Cobalt is pleased to announce that drilling 1.5 kilometers east-southeast of the Castle Mine is an underexplored area perspective for a new deposit type. Has intersected well-mineralized felsic Archean units at a downhole depth between 77 meters and 163 meters, as well as mineralized mafic to ultramafic units above and below over significant widths starting from surface.
Crap.
So I'm going to stop it there because we're going to start getting into all the different terminologies that I know the true mining guys out there are going to look at and like, why on earth did you say it like that? But it doesn't seem all that crazy to me.
Well, they're waiting on assays. So
Yeah,
these are not assays.
Yeah,
These are not assays.
I think the expectation, guys, was assays, and it looks like they're issuing guidance that within the next 7 to 10 days we'll see assays.
So I wonder if this will lead more speculation, like if these traders will hold the stock, waiting for assays.
Right now, I think we're seeing a definite push down.
Oh.
RBC seems to be an aggressive seller so far. It's early, but yeah, RBC definitely pushing it down.
There we go.
Yeah.
Creating yet another sell on news event live here.
Yep. It's almost like you said it was going to happen that way.
There's yeah, that's right. Well, there's your house positions. RBC quickly becoming sort of the second. So earlier, Anonymous and Haywood were both leading the pack, and now RBC way up there. You do see Anonymous buying a lot, though. I don't know if everyone could see that Anonymous was quickly moving up in the ranking there. So there is an Anonymous buyer scooping some shares, which is always nice to see. But definitely some selling pressure here.
Dude, look at this. Like people, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to swear, guys. People got to fucking learn, man. This is what happens. All the red flags are there from all these momentum traders on all these different groups telling everyone about the news and what the news is going to be. And now they're just shitting on you. Literally selling.
They do it every single
That's an assumption. But you got to get familiar with who's saying what and the outcome. What they say and the stock is down 17%.
And we were just at it was 0% when we first looked at
Yeah,
it.
but you know what? In our chat rooms, we keep it real and we talk about both sides. I mean, we warned our community that certain groups are out there talking about the news and potentially could see a sell on news, and that's what you have right here. Anywho.
Anywho, yeah. Well. Can't say I'm surprised. Like I said, yellow flags earlier for sure. You could argue red flags, but definitely, it's never comforting to see sort of a trading dominated chat room taking big positions because those guys are always basically going to be selling the news. So, you know, unless you have a lot of buyers that are excited by what they see, and, you know, it doesn't look like we have that right now, you know, you get a big drop in price. So, yeah, we're now down 20%, which is pretty significant on the day.
And someone's selling into the 50s there. So, okay, well, Johnny Mac, let's look at the positive side here. So you've got a sell-off from traders, and now you have some speculation that assays are going to come in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, 7 to 10 days per the news release. Yeah.
Okay, 7 to 10 days. So, you know, there's going to be some opportunity here. There's going to be another leg of speculation into assays.
Yeah.
What would
my
be a support
expectation,
line?
Karl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up. My expectation would be, I'll have to update this chart here just a second. So we're right at the 200 day right now. Yeah. So we're right at the 200 day right now. So there's your, you know, that's basically your support. You know, in the past, you know, we got some weak bounces off here and it didn't hold that well. I would look at this date here. I don't know how come my inspection tool is not working. There we go. So 47.5 is a low the last time it dipped. You know, I would look for a support zone there. And hopefully, you know, if you're a CCW long, again, I have a very small position. I would want to at least see us, you know, not get past this last low, at least set a higher low, and, you know, hopefully pivot from there. It is still early too, you know, buyers could come in, but right now I would say it's not looking great. You know, there obviously some people were just sitting waiting to sell the news. Someone from RBC definitely with a bigger position. I'm sure I could go back and look and probably find some RBC accumulation down here. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not going to do that right now, but I wouldn't surprise me if someone from RBC had been buying this dip and they were waiting to sell it. So that's,
and for those who just are tuning us in, because we had a little bit of a spike there as people are introducing this, Johnny Mac is breaking down the TA for us, for those who are wondering who is this other voice behind all this TA.
Very professional of you to reintroduce Johnny Mac. And we are now minus 24.
I laugh, but like I own a position.
Well, Johnny, did you get out, man?
No, I was, yeah, I didn't get out, so not good timing for me. But like I said, very small position, almost negligible for me. But you know, I'm sure there will be a bounce here at some point, and you know, we'll look to see how is the market shaping up looking into assays. So we have the next 2 weeks, and unfortunately, you know, the market conditions we are in as a whole, if we sort of look at the, you know, the S&P 500, just look sort of pivoting a little bit here, you know, things are a little bit ugly out there in the markets. You know, we had a big sell-off yesterday, a rare gap down on the S&P 500, quite a significant gap down actually, break even. The buyers did buy that dip. But you did see that we started to sell off again towards the end of the day. Well, you won't be able to see that on this chart, but it was a sort of a profit taking towards the end of the day. So what we want to see, these hollow red candles are nice. You want to see bulls buying the dip. So it got pushed down quite a bit below its previous low, but buyers did buy it, which is good. But what we were looking to see today, which we did not get, was follow through. So you see today that we opened lower than yesterday, we tried a rally, and then it's been sort of stuffed, and now we're pushed down. So we do have some buying action coming in there late in the day. This is the sort of the 5-minute chart, and you could kind of see this coming yesterday. So here's our gap down. It started to recover, started to make some higher highs, higher lows in the short time frame. We were getting overbought on this really short time frame. You see a lot of these upper wicks on the candles, so that's all profit-taking sellers starting to make themselves known, and then they pushed it down. So, you know, that tells you after this dip that there just wasn't enough buying momentum to sustain, and we're back into sort of a corrective phase. So we are off, at least off the lows, but to me this is looking, you know, still fairly weak right now. So it's caution for sure. You know, some people take the they take the philosophy that I want to be buying when everyone else is scared, and that's that's a legitimate strategy. I think anyone that bought some of the dips on the marijuana stocks yesterday, especially if you're a day trader, you did well. If you were buying this gap down on weed, for example, there was quite a swing in money that was to be made. But again, very similar to the S&P 500, we had this, hollow white candle indicating buyers buying the dip, and it just couldn't follow through. We sort of ended up bouncing off the same resistance level. I'll give you a 5-minute view. More or less a triple top here. Ooh. 1, 2, 3 times at the same level. Just couldn't get through, and now we're back into sort of a corrective phase. So, a number of people in the market have made commentary that there's a decent correlation right now between the S&P 500, SPY, and weed. I would agree with that. It's a fairly good correlation. They are tracking each other somewhat well. Although earlier today it's not an exact correction. I found the weed stocks were sort of a little bit sideways, whereas the S&P 500 was continuing to go down. But now you see that they're sort of catching up and dipping a little bit. I did have a chart up.
John. We got 1 minute.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, one thing I wanted, before everyone loses their marbles on this, I wanted to sort of make note of something. Let's see if I can bring it up here. Where are we? See if I can get this in 1 minute.
Yeah, no worries. Just so everyone knows, you can probably, I'm going to ask Johnny Mack if he can join me in our Sunday Night Live in our private Facebook group. And if he's available, we can continue on with this stuff and look forward to other things in the markets.
Oh, it's not going to work. Oh, I typed the symbol in wrong. Sorry, bear with me, guys.
Yep.
Hey, no worries, man. I love seeing this stuff and watching
so amazing.
CCW explode in front of our face.
And you own it. Did you get out?
No, I'm on the show.
Jesus.
What I'm trying to do is bring up the equity put call ratio in the U.S.
Oh, the volatility?
Chicago. Not the volatility index, but that's another one. I was just trying to do some sentiment indicators here. See if there we go. Okay. So what you're seeing here on the top, we have the S&P 500 as represented by SPY, and then on the bottom we actually have our equity put call ratio. So for anyone not familiar with options, you have calls and puts. When you're buying calls, you're bullish on the stock. When you're buying puts, you're bearish. So what this is measuring is the ratio of the people entering call positions versus put positions. The higher this number, the more people are entering put positions, which means the higher the number of people that are bearish on the market. So one thing, before everyone feels like, the floor is falling out and this is the end of the bull market, we are in an area where there's a lot of really bearish sentiment. So we're hitting these highs. You see these anytime we hit, so the higher this number, the more bearish basically. So the last time we seen a spike, we had a big dip in the price. This put call ratio went very high, and then we recovered from that. And the same, all the mess that we had earlier in the year when we had this big dip, the put call ratio got high again, and we recovered. And we had a really big spike in bearish sentiment on that second dip, and again, it recovered off that. So sentiment is contrarian, or I guess I should say sentiment when it hits its extremes is contrarian. So when everyone is really elated and euphoric, when it's the hookers and blow type mentality, that's the kind of time to be nervous. And when everyone thinks that the world is coming to an end, that's the time that you can be bullish with some caution. So just looking at some of these spikes, you can see in the past when we've hit sort of these relatively high areas of bearishness. Again, the higher on this chart, the more bearish. We are getting some volume coming in. And the other thing I will note too, although we've set a higher low from a lower low from the last time, the last dip, we did set a higher low in momentum. I don't know if everybody can see that without me annotating, and I'm probably going way over time here on you guys, but there's your there's your higher low there in momentum and your lower low. So that's not being confirmed. That doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't gonna, continue lower, but it is one sort of encouraging sign. And I do like that the bearishness is quite high right now. So we could start to get into a situation where, people, you have people moving in to take advantage of those that are capitulating. So just another perspective to offer on the overall markets.
Well, that was amazing.
Yeah,
Johnny
love it,
Mac
man.
also referenced hookers and blow. Also amazing. CCW is sitting at 51 cents. And
Covering a little bit, yeah.
I'm hoping that Johnny Mac his schedule is open on Sunday night, because I'd love to talk more about this stuff. Just him and I and some other friends in our Facebook group, private Facebook group. Follow the Money on Facebook. So I won't put Johnny Mac on the spot here, but I will be working behind the scenes to get him to come and join me on Sunday Night Live.
Right.
So should we wrap it up, Brandon?
That's a full wrap up. I hope everyone enjoyed the show.
Johnny Mac, thank you very
We'll be back
much.
again soon. Thanks again, Johnny Mac.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
Later.
Awesome.